This is a Willets Point Shea Stadium-bound 7 express train. The next and last stop is Willets Point, Shea Stadium.
Oh, yes, it is the Subway to Shea podcast. Anthony Rivera here with you, talking about all the news and happenings surrounding that team from Queens, the New York Mets. Episode 160 from the Subway to Shea studios in my office. Make sure you're following Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. You can follow me on X at Rivera86. And subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify. And if you're watching it on YouTube, make sure to like this video. A lot to talk about this week. A lot of you in the comments today. Got 22 people so far in the room. Shout out to Carlos Ortiz. It's a tough way to end this week, considering that the Mets lost a big series to the Phillies. We're going to get into that. We're going to get into so much more. And I have my guest joining me this week, Jordan Simpson. He sings, he produces series recap songs after each Mets series, so I'm pretty sure we're going to be seeing one shortly. And he does a lot of great jingles with the Jingle Man. Greg, Jordan, awesome having you on the podcast. How you doing, my friend?
I'm doing all right. Thank you for having me.
All right, man. It's really been a tough weekend for the Mets, and I think even bigger than the loss that the New York Mets had was the injury to Francisco Lindor. You know, he left Friday night's game after running to second base. Overran it, and I think he just took a wrong step, and it kind of triggered something in his back, which we now have found out today. That's something that's kind of been lingering over the past couple of weeks, is this injury to his back. Rested him on Saturday, played one inning on Sunday, and, you know, it just looked awkward watching him run after he got a base hit. So now he's going in for the dreaded MRI. We'll see what happens coming out of that. What are your thoughts, Jordan, on this whole situation with Lindor going down?
I feel like as a Mets fan, you just naturally fear the worst. That's just kind of like how we're kind of like, you know, that's how we are. I think my dog's barking, but I think, you know, he's scared too, by the way. But I think we know how good he is and how important that he has been for the season. So I think the prospect of him missing any time is very scary, just given where we are in the season, where every single game does matter.
Yeah,
my dog's he's deciding to bark. But
he's upset. Like, he's just as upset as we are. It's all good.
I think he thinks that the situation's very rough. But I think, you know, I'm trying to not get too worked up or too nervous until we actually find out what it is, because if it's something that's lingering, you never know if that's a positive thing where he can manage it, or if it's going to be something where it's like, hey, you know, we need to really get this under control. Because I think when you have the national series coming up, and I want to make clear too, when it's the national, I don't care who we're playing, we want to go out there and play hard every single game. Somebody said they can't really hear me. Let me turn me up a little bit. But I think given where things are, you have to make sure that he's okay before the Philly series, the Atlanta series, and the Milwaukee series. Those are the three series where it's literally all hands on deck, and it's nerve-wracking, and you always fear the worst. I'm just trying to not mentally go to that place just yet. I'm trying to stay positive one day at a time. And Acuna, who's looked pretty good so far, even though it's only been 2 games, but I feel good with his upside and his potential to fill in, that there's still potential and upside there to give you some sort of production. And he brings speed too. Like, he brings his own skill set. So I'm not panicking at this point in time. I'll leave it at that.
No, yeah, I totally agree with that. And Rosie K says it here. You know, Lindor plays even if he's hurt. The fact that he's not playing means that he's really, really hurt. So, you know, my concern with Lindor, and, you know, you think about these injuries about the back, and all I can think about is David Wright. That's the first person that comes to my head. As we know, David Wright ended up having spinal stenosis, and he got hurt making a diving lunge at third base. That's, you know, a major concern. I'm not going to err on that caution that far yet. Just like you said, we don't know at this moment in time what the severity of this injury is. And, hindsight's 2020. Maybe they should have rested him today as well and see where it goes. The back is nothing to mess with. Those injuries linger for so long. And, it's just a frustration. I mean, I'm pretty sure, I've had back injuries that have lasted a while. So, just can only imagine what an athlete has to go through to just get ready and try to, get themselves ready for a game. He's active. He's all over the field, defense, offense. He steals bases. So to lose him for any part of this run here that the Mets are trying to make is very, upsetting and frustrating. But we hope that he comes back healthy, and it's going to be big. This Washington series is huge here. I'm pretty sure Washington wants to knock us out of contention, and they got a whole bunch of young kids that are coming up. They got a good team that's going to be really good going into the future for, quite some time.
100%. And that's the thing that I do. When you have the young teams that they have nothing to play for in terms of the standings, that they have no pressure that we may have as fans where we are currently, because we're like, we have to win as many games as possible to be in the picture. Because if you lose a couple and a couple teams win a couple, then you can be thrown, further back and it becomes harder. But they have the young talent, like they really do. They're James Wood, C.J. Abrams, Dylan Cruz. Yeah. Like it's nothing to mess with or to take for granted. I still think that we're obviously a better team, but there's nothing about this I'm going into this thinking like this is the White Sox. This is not at all that level. Like they're going to play competitive, similar I think to the Athletic series where they're not like a great team, but they're pesky. They have some guys that you have to just respect. But I think even too, when I think about it, Pete hasn't really gotten hot. JD's been robbed a bunch, so he's got to get some better luck. Nimmo's been taking better at bats. Alvarez has been taking better at bats. So I feel like however long Lindor's out, I just hope that even in the meantime, somebody else just steps up, because Lindor's been carrying this team. There's no other way to put it. He's been carrying this team, on both sides of the ball. So I think with his absence, with Pete having a good year, but by his standards a down year, this is the time to get going. And now Alvarez looks like a threat at the plate. I feel like this is just a time for somebody to take charge and to not press, to not try to be Lindor, because nobody's Lindor, but to at least stay within yourself, but just to say, okay, listen, he's down, but the show goes on. We got to keep playing hard, and every game matters. Every at bat matters. So don't take it for granted, for sure.
I muted myself. There's all this talk about Lindor and whether, he is an MVP or not, right? Because of the fact that, Shohei Ohtani is quite possibly going to have a 50-50 season, which has been unheard of. So there was oh, is Lindor really an MVP? He doesn't have the same stats. There's even some other players with better stats, but he has been every bit of the MVP of this team, willing them to try to get into the postseason this year. You saw it in Toronto when he had that, game-tying home run, how that just changed the outlook of the entire game. They're throwing a no-hitter, and he hits that game-tying homer in the ninth inning, and then the offense wakes up, and it's alive. He on defense, leader. In the clubhouse, he's a leader. We're seeing it now without him, what this team has been, unable to do. So to have Francisco Lindor out for any amount of time is going to be frustrating. I assume, especially with him getting an MRI, that he won't be playing tomorrow. If they have to find a way to win these games without him. And a lot of that emphasis goes on, the other two guys in Pete Alonso and Brandon Nimmo. And I got a couple comments here, Ricardo saying, can Pete act like it's his contract year? Aaron Blue Shirts Banter saying saw Alonso on a milk carton earlier at the store. Look, when it comes to Pete Alonso, obviously you look at it from the peripheral view, right? You look at it from afar, and it looks like he's got good stats this season. But with runners in scoring position, he's batting .213, bases loaded, batting under the Mendoza line. Rosie K saying, they may be able to manage it with regards to Francisco Lindor, his back, cortisone injections, but the team has other issues. The offense is MIA. The bullpen can't be trusted, and they fall short whenever they need to play well. And this is something that they have to address, and they have to turn it around with their play on the field. We really need these guys to come up big for this team with these last 2 weeks of the season upon us.
It's really tough. And I think even a game like today goes to show you, though, the bullpen only give up 1 run. So at a certain point, it's like you see how the bullpen's been so good for this whole stretch, but you leave no margin for error when the offense isn't producing. And so when you have games where you go up early, like even Saturday, for example, you go up early, but then their pitching locks in. If they chip away, which it's the Phillies and Bryce Harper gets them right back into it, but then all of a sudden, okay, you have 1 run, but you couldn't add more to that offensively to give any more of a cushion. So there are little things like that where we had at points both things working at the same time, but for the most part, they really don't, where the offense can go out and score 12 runs and give up 5, but you're okay. But then you have it where the bullpen can be in a spot where, okay, you have it set up to where you want, but then they can't lock it down. So it's like you have certain things work and certain things don't work at the same time. I think at the end of the day, though, this is a time where I don't care how, just win games. I don't care how ugly it looks. If we win the game, I'm thrilled. One day at a time, we turn the page to the next day, then we win that game. Awesome. Like, whatever you got to do to win the game at hand, that's it. Like, we can look back at games and say, oh, well, we could have done this or we should have done this. Like, listen, if we won the game, that's all that matters. If we lost the game, sucks, but we got to go to the next day because we can't, this is go time. There's no other way around it. Like, this is the time where everything has to guys just have to step up, no other way around that.
Yeah, they definitely have to step up. And like you said, win by any means necessary. If it's a walk-off walk, oh, by all means. I mean, just get the wins however you can. This team has been, frustrating watching with like the bases loaded. Sometimes they score on pass balls. Sometimes they score on sac flies. And that's it. They're struggling with scoring with the bases loaded. I don't even know what the average is with the bases loaded for the entire team. But they have really struggled to come up with that big hit. And you have to wonder, when this team struggles like that to score runs when they have these pitchers on the rope, does it give the other team that extra confidence saying, you know what, I think we could come back? I think that happened in Philly on Saturday when the Mets went up 4-0, but the Mets could have had a lot more runs if they would have just gotten 1 or 2 big hits. And the fact that they didn't, I feel like let the Phillies know that they could come back and win this game.
We've seen it on our end too, where if we shut a team down when they have a big chance to score and we prevent it, how we feel on the back end. Like, oh, here we go. We're right back in this thing. Whether we're up or if we're down, but we keep the margin small. Like, it does make a difference in just how things play out, because going up, 4-0 early, like the difference between Friday and Saturday, for example, because Friday we were up 6-0.
Yeah.
That's tougher than 4-0 because then it goes 4-1 and then 4-3, just like that. If it's 6-3, you still feel pretty good. So it's kind of like how those extra couple runs really just changes how you manage a game, because then you think, okay, well, it's within reach, or you go to your B bullpen and you say, hey, listen, we just need to get through this game, hold it down, don't go to your A guys. But even like when you have a series we've had in the past where, Nimmo said it too, where if you have a game where you don't come back and win, but if you fight back and you make them use their top 2 guys in their bullpen, you burn them for the next, like the Baltimore series, for example, where we were down like 7-1, and then it was like 7-5, then it was like 8, whatever the final score was. But bottom line is you brought in Kimbrel and I think Cano or whatever, but like 2 of their top guys to burn. So like all I'm saying is that all those little things really do make a difference. It's just a couple runs here, the flow, how the manager approaches it, because you also have to be diligent. And even though now is the time where you want to push guys too, because you have to just win games, but you also have to be aware, because you don't want to use DS 3 games in a row. Obviously, like you want to be able to be diligent, but it's frustrating to watch, and we've had bad luck too. I mean, I was very upset, to say the least, when JD got robbed of the home run. I was like, come on, because that was a big hit that could have been a momentum shifter right there. And then they got the momentum back because he literally just stole the home run back. So I'm rambling, but that's the whole idea. Every little thing really does play a difference in the momentum. And I think the players feel that for sure.
JD definitely looks like he's ready to break out. There's a couple of deep fly balls that he hit that just missed being the home run. Obviously, the one that you mentioned, which was caught, I think it was by Stevenson, who got the game winning hit as well. So very frustrating that JD could not wasn't able to come through there. But we just have to like move on now from this series. We're on with Washington now, and then we got 4 games with Philly coming up this weekend, which is going to be huge and which we'll get into later. Shout out to everyone in this room right now. 109 of you in the show with us. Make sure you like the video. Make sure you subscribe to Subway to Shea, and make sure you're following Jordan at JR Simpson Music on X. Now, they had to make a move, and I don't know if they were saying that this move wasn't concurrent with the Lindor injury, but the Mets did bring up Luisangel Acuña, and he made his major league debut. He went 2 for 4 on Saturday with 2 singles, went 0 for 3 on Sunday after coming in for Lindor. They optioned DJ Stewart, who really was not going to have a place on the team and get much playing time with so many people on the roster. But what are you looking forward to seeing most from him in his short time that he's going to have on this roster this September?
I'm excited just to watch. I love like young players who have just that energy, kind of just that kind of vibe of a guy who is versatile, but he can fly, that young, athletic. Because I feel like that could be a spark, and it brings like another element to this team that he can get on and just steal. Whatever capacity he plays, I think it's valuable for him because as much as AAA is also winding down too, but for him to be in a pennant race with the big league team, to be able to sit with Lindor, JD, Nimmo, like all the veterans, and kind of like be there and soak it in. I think it's big for his development. But I think in terms of what he can provide, I just want to see him play. I feel like we kind of talked about how with Washington, in a sense, like the young and they can kind of play free. I kind of just want to see him play free, even though we're in a pennant race with more pressure. But like just to kind of just see him be him, not to do too much. You don't want to press. I feel like that was the issue with Alvarez, which is kind of his personality too, in a way, like kind of just, I'm gonna like literally the best on his neck. Like he's like that kind of guy to be like, it makes sense. But I think with Acuna, just to play his game, because I think if he just plays his game, that could be valuable. If he's playing spelling a day for Iglesias, because he's going to need days off too. He's not going to play every single day, or getting some reps in the outfield. Like he can provide a lot. And I think when he wasn't called up, I was a bit perplexed in the beginning, which I understand the rationale, but I was like, I understand DJ Stewart gets on base and you have an extra man. So if he gets on base, then you can run for DJ Stewart, but it's still an extra body on the bench that if he's struggling, it's not going to do you many favors. So I think with Acuna, with McNeil down too, I think he kind of fits, not to be Jeff McNeil, but that pseudo versatility guy who is there, can do what you need of him. And I just want to see him have fun and just make things happen.
Yeah, with Jeff McNeil going down for the rest of the season, I think that kind of put more emphasis on bringing him up when, obviously Mendy and David Stearns thought he was ready. So great to see him up now, get a couple of weeks in, get used to playing in the major leagues. I know they have Eddie Alvarez up here as well. So, we'll see how much playing time he gets with Lindor being out. But I'll say this, with Lindor, as much time as Lindor is out with this back injury, I think you got to let, Luisangel Acuña get that playing time, playing shortstop. You want to see that speed and see what he can do, kind of be that late inning pinch runner if need be. And I just don't want the fans to put too much pressure and emphasis on him in the heat of this pennant race. Remember in 2022, once they started bringing up Francisco Alvarez and obviously Vientos towards the end of the season, a lot of pressure, especially on Alvarez. A lot of pressure got put on him in that weekend series in Atlanta that we all love to forget. But, I just want him to enjoy himself, have a good time. Carlos Ramos saying impressive at bats from Acuna, especially that at bat in the 9th yesterday. Shea Parkinlet says he wants to see him steal. And Junior Swingman also saying he's liked what he's seen from Acuna so far at the plate. Now, I want to talk a little bit about what has happened over this week. I was the podcast was last Sunday, so we didn't get to recap the Toronto, and now we're going to recap the Philly series. But I want to know your thoughts, your takeaways, from this week of road trip that the Mets had. They took 2 out of 3 from Toronto. Easily could have lost some of that series, but like you said, right, win by any means necessary, and that's what they did in Toronto. And then obviously they lost the series against Philadelphia, and we'll try to turn the page here. But what were your takeaways just from this week in general? This one of these final road trips, second to last road trip that the Mets have.
I think in terms of the games that we lost, I guess besides Tuesday's game, I felt like the games that we've lost were kind of within reach. So I don't think we weren't blown out really. I mean, Tuesday was just Peterson had a rough start. But what he did today is that was just an anomaly because today he was phenomenal. I think as a whole, even the games that we've won, like the Monday game, we could have lost because it was just the 2 pass balls, and we were this close to being no hit. And we won that game too. So I think as much as we can sit here and say, oh, well, we should have won yesterday or today, we could have very easily been 1-5 this week. So I think as a whole, that's kind of just how I like to look at things. We could have done better, but this could have been a much different scenario where we could have lost a couple of those games. And I think even the way that they've won those games, they just fought. You scratched across runs, you did whatever you had to do, and you've seen flashes of the offense going off. And so I feel like that's just essential really at this point to kind of get that to be more of a consistent thing, because the pitching staff has been so good for so long, but that's just not sustainable for them to have the bullpen to have a 1 ERA or the rotation to give you 6-7 innings every single start. You don't want to depend on that being your tool to winning. It's helpful, but in the scenario that you don't want it to be a thing where that's great. Now what do you do? I think it's been a productive week. I think there are definitely ways that you can look at things and say, yeah, certain things could be reevaluated or could have been better. But I think to me, everything that happened. So I'm not going to dwell on what could have been because it doesn't change the fact that we're here where we are right now in a pennant race, which a few months ago, we were 11 games under 500. And so now we're here, what are we, 10 or 11 games above 500, whatever we are now. But the season's very much different. So I think everything is right in front. I hate to sound like Aaron Boone, everything is right in front of us, but it's really, really true. It's really true though, because all we have to do is win the games. And I don't know what's going on with the Braves right now, but say if they were to win, I mean, tomorrow if we win and they lose, it's that kind of a thing where this thing is so fickle, where it could just change so quickly. So we have to kind of just be present, not overreact to a win or a loss, but you want to have more wins than losses for sure.
Currently bottom 8, it's tied at 2 between the Dodgers and the Braves. So let's hope that the Dodgers can help us out here, because if they do, we're still tied. I think to me, what I've said this weekend is it's better to be either a game up or tied than a game down, right? I feel like that's a better, scenario for the Mets. And I hope that they're able to keep that, going into some of these tough games that they have. Obviously, the Mets have one of the tougher schedules to end the season here, and it's going to be a tough stretch. For me, the Lindor home run in Toronto and you mentioned it in that no-hitter game, was such a huge boost. And I think that's something that I've really enjoyed about this team and about the managing of Carlos Mendoza, is how easily they are able to turn the switch on a loss. We're going to see how that continues after these 2 tough losses. And let's be honest. Every loss from here on out is going to be excruciating. It's going to be tough no matter how it ends. It could be 1-0. They can blow a game. It doesn't matter. Every loss from here on out is going to be an excruciating loss. And all we can do is hope that this team overcomes it like they've done all season and figures out a way to win. If they win their next game, that's a winning season. They'll have 82 wins. They can't have a losing season, and it's a huge turnaround from last year when we were all talking in the offseason. Well, at least a lot of the media and even the Mets were trying not to put too much expectations into this season. And this is where we are right now with an opportunity to get into the postseason. So it's a big positive to me. So not only the Lindor, Tyler McGill had a big game Monday in Toronto. 6 innings pitched, 1 hit, no runs, 2 walks, and 9 Ks. He's very important going forward, especially in the rotation. And we'll talk about that a little bit later on in the show as well, because we got some bad injury news on the starting rotation front. But on top of that, you mentioned David Peterson, and I kind of want to hone in on that because in Toronto on Tuesday, 4 1/3 innings pitched, 8 hits, 5 earned runs, 2 walks, 2 strikeouts. How does he bounce back? Well, Sunday in Philly, 7 2/3 innings pitched, 4 hits, 1 earned run, 1 walk, 6 Ks. He almost got through 8 innings. I was kind of hoping he would. Thankfully, Phil Maton came in, saved the day there for him, so he did not, take a loss in this game. Man, David Peterson has been just out of this world this season. He is a huge reason, whether you like David Peterson or not, because I know a lot of people are conflicted on David Peterson. But he has been everything that this Mets team has needed and then some. You put him with Luis Severino and Sean Manaea and the 3 of them. You can even include Jose Quintana now with his last 4 starts. But this starting rotation has delivered, and a lot of that as well goes with David Peterson, who I think is 9-2 on the season. The Mets have won mostly every start, except for the last 2, have won mostly every start that he's come in and pitched with.
There's not much to say. Yeah, like he's been so good. I feel like when he's been on the mound, and what's been great about this rotation between Peterson and even Manaea now, like when they're on the mound, you just feel comfortable. And I think because we forget he was a first round pick too, like when he was drafted, and he's had the hip injuries, and I think that hip surgery that he had has allowed him to be more consistent pitching wise and with his mechanics, where he's been able to control his pitches, and I think that's been a huge difference maker for him, because we've seen starts where in the past seasons where he'll walk like 5 guys in the first inning, and you kind of see, like it's not going to be his day. But I think just his ability to attack hitters, and it just plays up. I mean, he has great extension. He's like 6'6" or 6'7" or whatever. So like he's going to get to the plate. Like it deceives hitters. And I think this is a time where it takes, for some guys, they come up and it clicks, but some guys it takes some time. Maybe this is a situation where it took some time with him and he was battling injuries, but maybe this is the time where he's coming into his own at the right time. And now that you have him in the rotation going forward, where now when you go into the offseason, and the offseason's the offseason, but I think when you do get to the offseason, that you look at Peterson as a guy who's going to be in your rotation going forward. And then for this season, you feel good because these games, every game matters, as we've been saying. I feel good with him going up against any lineup. So that's a massive revelation, I feel, for the team and for the organization, that he's a guy that you can trust and that he's been going deep into games too, which is essential, which is massive for him to be able to give the bullpen some rest and to give length and to just be effective. I mean, yeah, I think ever since that inning against the Yankees where he had the bases loaded, I think it were 1 out or whatever, and it could have been a very, very bad first inning, and he strikes out the next couple of batters, and it's like, whoa, that was impressive. And then he just hasn't looked back really since then. So glad he's on our side, because if he was on somebody else's team, I'd be like, dang, where is this guy coming from? But he's one of us, so we're good.
Yeah, you got to give credit to the new hip. I mean, that surgery has done wonders for him. And, when you look at the rotation, and I was thinking of this even in the offseason, we knew that this rotation was going to, be rotating, right? A year in and year out, because there was, 1-year deals and some small deals. We don't know outside of Kodai Senga, if he comes back healthy, maybe Paul Blackburn as well, another, injury risk there. But outside of those 2 guys who are going to be a part of this team, Quintana's probably not going to be returning to the Mets, I would assume. And I would hope that the Mets would try to sign, either Severino, Minaya, if not both. I would love both of them to come back because I think I think not only have they pitched well this season, but they just fit so well in Queens and in New York. And that's what you want in your players. So if they don't sign, it was to look at guys like Jose Budo, Tyler McGill, David Peterson, and see if they were going to be a part of the solution next season, because the Mets are not just going to be able to just spend a whole ton of money. There's so much that you got to think about. Pete Alonso, obviously there's the Juan Soto sweepstakes. There's so much that this roster needs. And if you can get anything out of guys like Peterson and McGill, that makes you not have to spend as much money in the rotation than you would want to, because obviously the rotation is where the most money is spent. We've seen it on other teams. We've seen it in free agency, what these pitchers are going for. So if Peterson can be a part of that, and Carlos Ramos says it, David Peterson has earned the 5th spot in the rotation next season. He agrees with you on that one. And, it would be huge to get these guys in the rotation and get them, because like I said, you look at what's going on in free agency next year, and the Mets have to spend their money wisely, even though they have a lot of it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and there's so many ways that they can go with it this offseason too, especially on like a side note with Vientos, as good as he's been, though he's been slumping, like he's still proven himself to be more than capable of being a very, very impactful player. So I think in terms of the rotation, I think what we've had, especially with besides the Major League Club, and you even have like Brandon Sproat blazing through the system. So you have ways or different players just organizationally that could be of great value going forward. And so I don't think that there's going to be, in the past, it's always been, okay, you need to fill the rotation. And so we've had to go and spend a bulk on the rotation, whether it was Scherzer, whether it was Verlander, whether it was Senga. But you did it out of necessity. It wasn't like, oh, we're rich, we're going to spend money. No, because we didn't have prospects really ready to put them into that situation. Now, when you have guys like McGill and Peterson, McGill hopefully keeps it going because he shows flashes and it gets you excited. But with Peterson, how he's been in Buto when he was starting, at times he was really, really good. So I don't think that we're in a position where in the past where we've had to spend a ton in the starting pitching market. I think that they're going to be very, very diligent and intentional. And I would love Minaya and Severino back. And they both seem to really enjoy their time here. So like, if it comes down to just where they want to play, I think we do have an edge on that side of things. Maybe, unless they get blown out of the water by a certain team, then that's that. But then, you think, okay, well, we can still find that version of a player in the offseason. Like a Walker Buehler, for example, who's having a down year, relatively speaking, for the Dodgers, but he's had like A+ stuff in the past. So maybe pitchers look at Minaya and Severino as guys who are going to get a big contract this offseason as, hey, the Mets may be a spot where I feel like I can get the most out of my ability, that if I sign a short-term deal, that would boost me going forward so I can get an even bigger opportunity, in my career. So there's so many different ways that they can go about it. Even with like the whole Pete and Soto conversation, you can go on and on about that, but I think as you go into the off season, there are going to be so many, it's not like a clear cut way to go about things. You can sit there and say, okay, we can bulk up on the offense and trust internally, or go for a couple guys on like the mid tier for the rotation, or maybe kind of go towards like a Corbin Burns and then say, okay, but now it's going to be Peter Soto. There are different ways they can go about it, at least with money coming off of the books. That is not my job. And so I trust the higher ups and the powers that be to take care of that. But I think organizationally, what we've seen, at least this year, is that there's a lot of promise going forward.
You look at off seasons like this and you're like, man, I don't know how this team's going to put this plan together and figure out a way to put this roster together. But when you got David Stearns at the helm, and he's already proven it in Milwaukee, and you're seeing it this season, I would say for the most part that David Stearns, all his acquisitions, whether through trade or free agency, for the most part, have really worked. You look at Jose Iglesias, you look at Tyrone Taylor, who had a big home run today. There's just been so many players. The pitchers, there's been some that haven't worked out, but for the most part, they have. And for that, I have 100% trust that he knows what he's doing when it comes to this offseason.
Yeah, that's the I mean, yeah, there have been a few moves that haven't worked, but no general manager or president of baseball ops are going to be perfect every single move that they make. But when you look at the moves that do work out, and you think, whoa, because Minai is pitching like a number one starter. If the playoffs start tomorrow, is he going to start? He may be your game one starter. And he was the guy who people are like, maybe a depth guy, maybe a swingman in the pen, and he's top of the rotation kind of guy. Severino, the same deal. He's going to be that guy, and this is where he is. So I feel like as Mets fans, and this is our first year with him, but we know that that's his reputation of finding those guys. And even guys like Nunez, for example, even though he's hurt, but he was essential at least to where we've been or where we've gotten to. And I think we have every reason to believe in what Stearns has to do. And I know people think about, the certain moves that I know the Josh Hader move is one that people think about when it comes to Alonso. I think it's a separate set of circumstances because you're dealing with the Brewers. It's a much smaller market than New York, different set of circumstances, I think, all around. But I think he has the best interests of the team and the organization in mind of whatever he does. And there's a lot that they know that we as fans don't. So, I just trust the process, but I think it'll be an interesting offseason to say the least. I think it's going to be one filled with Soto, Pete, Vientos, what's going to happen with Beatty. Oh yeah, we still have Ronnie Mauricio. Like all of those conversations that are going to come up where you have to really, I think it's a good problem to have in a way because you have a lot of internal options, that have competition. But when it comes to the free agency side of things, it's going to be rather intriguing.
You mentioned Walker Buehler. I like Ricardo also mentioning a guy like Nestor Cortez. These are those type of guys that, maybe they're having a down year, but they have the potential like Sevy does, like Sean Manaea does, that it's possible that they give you, this type of performance. And, David Stearns kind of knows the what buttons to press and how to get these guys, going on a team. And then obviously they go to, whatever the pitching lab and all that stuff is to get themselves, back on track. Manaea is one of those guys that did that way back when he was in San Francisco. So, I wouldn't be shocked if they go after a guy like Nestor Cortez or, like you mentioned, a guy like Walker Buehler. So we'll see where the Mets go when it comes to that in the offseason. But I want to save a lot of the offseason talk for, sometime in November, because that's when the World Series ends. So I'd like to get there, but we'll see what happens. Junior Swingman updating us on the game, 3-2 Dodgers. So the Dodgers win this game, and kind of this game against the Phillies and this series against the Phillies kind of means nothing, right? Because we're still tied. So let's, hopefully the Dodgers win. Hopefully the Mets move on to the series and get a win against Washington. I want to pull up here the standings for the wild card right now. See if I could bring this up here. Let's share this screen. And here we go. The wild card standings currently. San Diego Padres are up. They winning 3 in a row, their last 3. And they've had the best record in baseball since the All-Star break. So them, along with the Mets, are one of the two teams that have really turned it on since the All-Star break. You look at the Arizona Diamondbacks, who won today, and frustrating because they were down by 2 in the top of the 10th and then came back to score 3 in the bottom of the inning to win that game. So that's a little bit frustrating to have them win. So I think they're either up a game and a half, or they might be up 2 games when it comes to the New York Mets and where they stand. Atlanta Braves right now, half game up on the New York Mets, and the Mets, they're losers of 2 in a row, but they're still in this. We still have, what is it, about 13, 14 games left, and we'll see what happens here. But you look at this wild card, Jordan, and what do you think coming down to it, are you just focused in on the Braves? Obviously, the division out of reach, 9 games back, unless there's some like epic kind of collapse here. And we've seen them. We've been a part of them. But I think it's trying to stay focused on Atlanta. I think it's trying to stay a focus on the Arizona Diamondbacks as well.
This is peak scoreboard watch season because you never know. You never know which way it's going to go. And I think given how close it's been, like, yeah, I know San Diego's up by 3, so they're further ahead. It's still going to really come down to the wire. I feel like you're not going to get a solidified seeding until like the last couple of days of the year, if not the last day of the year, because I think you have. I'm not sure off the top of my head though. There's like matchups between the Dodgers and Diamondbacks or Padres in Arizona. Like they have a lot of those tough matchups that are going to mean something. So one team can go crazy and just beat the other one out of it. We have obviously our series with Atlanta. I think if anything, we got to do the best that we can. And when we get to the Atlanta series, if you win that series, that tiebreaker is big. I can't even, there's no words to really describe how important that would be, because you go in tied. I mean, we lost on the tiebreaker 2 years ago, but that's a sore subject. But at least having the tiebreaker now, and when you get to that point, just adds such a, I don't want to say a cushion because you don't want to take anything for granted, but I think if anything, the Braves are right in front of us. So that's what I'm looking at. Once we're ahead of them, then I'm looking at the Diamondbacks or whoever's in front of that next person. Unfocus on them. Whoever's in front. If the Padres lose tomorrow, I'll be happy. But that's not going to be my first thought to be like, okay, yeah, it's the Padres, because I just want to get in whatever way you can, and then hopefully things will work themselves out. It's going to be tough. I think just staring at the standings right now, it's starting to hit you like, holy cow, this is ridiculously tight, and this could just go so many different ways. Holy cow.
I can't remember the last time that there was this type of kind of race to get into the postseason with regards to the Mets, right? Like when they went to the postseason, probably since 1999, 98, 99, where there was this race towards the latter half of the season, towards the last couple of days of the year, where it was to try to get into the postseason. Maybe 2016 as well, if you want to throw that in there. But any of the times that the Mets have gone into the postseason, 2000, they had already won it in a week before. 2006, they ran away with the division. 2015, they kind of put everything in the books. Even 2022, because of the tie break and all that stuff. But this kind of closeness between about 3 or 4 teams, I haven't seen that in a very long time.
Yeah, it's very anxiety inducing too as a fan. But I think given where the expectations were for this team too, like I think when somebody asked me, I had them at 85 wins, which is very much attainable, obviously because you're 4 games away from that. But I think there's a possibility where if you have 88, 89 wins, you may not make the playoffs, which is a bummer. But that's kind of, I mean, I think as a fan, I mean, I'm not going to tell people how to fan, but I think at a certain point, if we end the season with, say, 90 wins and you fall short, and I think you can take the route of, oh, well, we should have won these games. Like, guys, we were 11 games under 500, and we won with 90 wins. This is a ridiculous anomaly of a season to have all of these teams fighting for a spot, and one of them to not make it with this many wins. But it's going to be very, very interesting to see just how it goes down, and I think it goes to show you, I think, too, just the value. Like, I do like the expanded playoffs. I know that's kind of like some people love it, some people are against it. I think it just keeps things interesting because there's also the seeding implications and all that stuff, and more teams are in it, so you have fewer teams that are just gonna tank and make things just less entertaining. But I think this is kind of going to be one of those things where 10 years from now, you're going to be looking back like 2024, the wild card race, and then all of a sudden come down to the documentary following the Mets, the Diamondbacks, the Padres, the Braves, and all of the games down the stretch. And I think that's why I'm trying to be as present as I can, because this is going to be one of those seasons where it's going to be one to remember. I just hope that we just make it in. That's it.
shout out to Jeff Cohen, has the Dodgers up 8-2 on the Atlanta Braves. So I don't want to say it's over just yet because you never know, but this is a good sign. And this would keep the wild card tied right now, which is very important for us. Shout out also to Shea Parking Lot, who is behind enemy lines in Arizona. And he went to the game today, although they didn't win. Although the Diamondbacks didn't lose, but he's out there going to those games. Shout out to you as well. Look, this is coming down to the wire, and we can do is just hope every game that this team is able to. They got to look at this game too and be like, you know what? Next game we got to get this one back, and hopefully against this Washington team, who I'm going to say right now, and I said it earlier, they are not going to not play this Mets team hard. You got a bunch of young kids. You mentioned them earlier. A lot of good kids on that team, an up and coming team, and they are going to play to try to eliminate this Mets team from any type of contention. I want to get into some of the latest news and happenings with this Mets team. The Mets traded for Eddie Alvarez, and he's going to be a part of the, infield, helping out. He plays a little bit of infield, plays a little bit of outfield. Nice little backup guy right there. Obviously, with Jeff McNeil out for the rest of the season, you need one of those utility guys. You have him. You have Acuna, who's also kind of a utility guy because he could play short, second, outfield. Same thing with Eddie Alvarez, who has a little more experience. I think he was in AAA with Boston, which got Pablo Reyes designated for assignment. Only got to see him for a short amount of time, but he scored that big winning run in Chicago in the 9th inning, so we'll take that. So thanks to him and all the work that he did. Paul Blackburn had a little bit of a setback. He was shut down with and it sounds awful, but according to David Stearns, he said it was not that bad. Spinal fluid leak. I don't know. To me, that sounds a little bit off. Says nothing to be worried about on that, but this does put a lot more emphasis on a guy like Tyler McGill.
100%. I think how he looked, and he's throwing that sinker too, which is a huge addition to his arsenal, because I think for him coming up when he was kind of skyrocketing through the system, the big thing with him being a big guy, that fastball just carried him through, and guys just weren't hitting it. But when you get to the major league level, your margin for error is very, very small. And if you don't have it and you can't locate it, then you're just going to struggle. And I think having that extra movement profile too. I mean, you saw pitches into Vladdy where it's coming in, it just dies on the inner half, which is, if he can just locate that pitch, I think it's a game changer because you have to respect it. And his velocity was up the last start too. So I think McGill is such an interesting guy because he always shows you flashes of being so good. Then you'll have a stretch of having a struggle, and you're like, oh, wait, here we go. But then he just turns it on again. But we've seen it a couple of times this year where the Dodgers game shut them down. Chicago, sure, it's Chicago, but hey, struggled in the first inning, but settled in. That's all you need. And then on Monday, I mean, he was phenomenal. He's shut down 16 in a row. So it's going to be interesting to see how the whole rotation situation plays out. When they were saying that Blackburn's more week to week, it's like, okay, well, I'm not going to bank on him. I'm not going to, have my sights on him returning because that's just like a week to week, such a weird thing. And you factor in getting ramped up to some degree. So I feel like this is McGill, and I hope he takes this as like, yep, this is my turn. I'm just going to go out there and to be aggressive. I think once he's aggressive, I think that he has the arm talent to really be able to dominate, and it's really just a matter of execution. But I mean, we've seen him in his ups and downs. You just hope that this is like an upstretch for him where it matters. But when he's on, he's borderline unhittable. So I have confidence in him. I'm excited to see him start. He gets to start in this series, right? I think against the Washington, right? Because he
does.
So I mean, granted, they're not an easy team, but at least he's going up against a team that I feel like he could have decent success against. Young guys, I think that he could, I don't know. I have faith and confidence in him given what we've seen. And I'm intrigued. I feel like there's going to be a moment, I mean, if he has a rough inning, that I'll be on edge. But if he settles in, once he settles in, it's like, oh, I'm chilling, But it's a matter of settling for anybody, once you get that flow. Um, but yeah, it'll be interesting to see what he does.
It would be awesome if we could get that Tyler McGill for the rest of the way that was pitching that first month of April. I think it was like 2022 when he was filling in for DeGrom and Scherzer, and he was untouchable. It was kind of like what he pitched on Monday. So if he could build off of that, that would be awesome. He's pitching on Tuesday. He'll get the start on Tuesday against, I think it is, who is this? Mitchell Parker. I don't know too much about him, but he's 7-9 with a 4.24 ERA. We'll see how it goes with that and that series coming up. We'll talk about that shortly. But I want to get into one more news note. We lost this week. Ed Kranepool passed away September 8th. Spent his whole career with the Mets, 18 years. He's kind of a real life Mr. Met, basically. 1962 to 1979. 261 batting average, 118 RBIs, 118 home runs, 614 RBIs, 69 World Series champion with the Miracle Mets, 73, the You Gotta Believe team that won the National League champion, all-time leader in games played, second in plate appearances, third in at-bats, third in hits, fourth in doubles, fifth in RBI. So he's at the top of the chain. Now, we didn't get to see him play, but he was always around Citi Field. I got to talk with him. It's an interview that I have not released yet because there was some technical issues. So I'm going to try to, during the off season, piece it together so you guys can hear it. But he was beloved by not only his teammates, the organization, but by a lot of fans here. And, upsetting to see him pass away. Obviously, Shea Parking Lot said he met Ed once at Citi Field. Carlos Ortiz, rest in peace, said Kranepool, Maureen as well, sending condolences as well. What are your thoughts on Ed Kranepool? I don't know, do you get to watch any of that 69 team, through, obviously we could watch it on YouTube because there's so many games on YouTube and we always see the highlights there, but he was just such an important part of the fabric of this organization. You look at in 2020 when Tom Seaver passed away, obviously the franchise of this organization and what a big blow that was. But, this year, this season, we've already lost three members of the 1969 team: Jerry Grody, Bud Harrelson, another a big member of this squad, and Ed Kranepool. I mean, it's tough to see these guys go, and they meant so much to this organization.
Yeah, it's really sad to see. I think as for me, like a Mets fan growing up when I was young, like I did like my deep dives of like Mets history, and I would watch DVDs and anything I could find about just the history of the Mets, the history of Shea Stadium, and all of that stuff. And Ed Kranepool was a big part of all of that stuff. Where an original Met, and to be an original Met and also win the World Series 7 years later, that's itself is an accomplishment. But everything you hear about him, and we didn't get the privilege to see him, but he just seems like the epitome of what it means to be a franchise Met, and to be a guy who came up from the beginning when everything, literally from the beginning, day one, where the team was not winning at all, to then win a championship and to have the career that he had all with the same team. Uh, and it's tough, over the course of the year, just the different losses that we've had. And it kind of just makes you put into perspective how massive it was to have Old Timers Day when we did, because at least we had the chance to see everybody together. Because, obviously that time, given just how, time works, unfortunately, it's tough to keep everybody together from that period. And so it's tough to hear about. And yeah, it's really unfortunate. I'm glad also the Mets made the decision to wait until next year to do a patch for him, because even though they have sadly they have a couple patches already to honor people, so to add another one, that would exactly, so that would be tough to to do more. But I think he deserves to have a year, a whole. He's definitely worthy of having a whole year to just acknowledge what he's meant to this organization, to the franchise.
Yeah, he's got 3 patches. The Mets have 3 patches on there. We didn't even talk about Willie Mays, who was a part of the 1973 team as well. There, Jeff Cohen mentioning Jim McAndrew. I totally forgot about that, so that one's on me. He was also a part of the '69 team, a part of that Mets pitching staff that had passed away this year. But you talk about um the old timers day. That was just a fun day that Steve and Alex Cohen put together. Just seeing all those players come back, you wish some of them that weren't there, some of them that had already passed away, could have been there. But man, was that just a magical? It was a magical day, a magical moment, and it was great to see a lot of these players because, like you just never know when you're going to see them come back. But so grateful for all that, Ed Kranepool, a lot of those 69 guys, 73 team, all that history. A lot of people talk about all the bad stuff, bad history that comes with the Mets, but this is some of the great stuff that Ed Kranepool and all these guys were a part of that we latch on to because it's important to us. And, just wanted to say, condolences not only to Ed Kranepool's family and friends, but just, all the Met fan base who loved him growing up and getting to watch him play. So rest in peace, Ed Kranepool. Before we wrap up the show, I want to get your thoughts, Jordan, on the series coming up. All right, we got a big 3-game series against Washington, got a 4-game set against Philly. We know that Luis Severino will start that 4-game set on Thursday. Don't know the rest of the rotation moving ahead there, but we know Sean Manaea is going in game 1 against Washington on Monday. We mentioned earlier Tyler McGill going on Tuesday. Wednesday will be Jose Quintana. And look, I want to know what you're thinking right now going into this series and what you expect to see from this Mets team. The Braves lost, so we're still tied. All is okay in the world, and we can now focus and move in on trying to get this wild card.
Yeah, I mean, I think I'm going in more with the day by day mentality. I think when you look at the series as a whole, I've never been someone to say must sweep. That's just never been my nature because sweeping is very, very hard to do. But that said, you need to go in and you need to, at a minimum, win the series because we're a better team. Like that's just the facts. We are a better team. I feel good with our starting pitching. Go out there, don't embarrass ourselves. For this series at least, just go out there, play hard, and I'm confident. Yet I also know that this team is very pesky that we're playing against. So it's not going to be a pushover. Like I don't expect these games to be. I mean, who knows? It could be like an 11-2 game when we win, but I don't expect each game to be a blowout. There could be games where we win like 4-2, or there's some tight moments. It's not going to be easy, but I think you go into this series and you just do. You win that game. You win tomorrow's game. Do that, awesome. Win the next game, and you kind of just do the same thing, rinse and repeat each day. And then I think the Philly series is the tough one. That's the tough one. I like it being at home. I really do because I think that we as fans now have the ability to influence it. To have that home field advantage where it really matters. And we've seen how loud. I mean, I was at City a couple of the Baltimore games and how loud it got, even on a Wednesday afternoon. How loud it got when it wasn't even full, and that was earlier, in or late August or whatever. But the point is that these games are massive. I think if we're able to go to games, cheer the team on because this is it. This is the last homestand of the year, and there's a possibility that we can get back at Citi Field for a playoff game. But if we make the playoffs, we also don't even know what the seating is going to be. If we're going to be back there, so there's a lot of variables. But go out there, just one day at a time. I'm not going to flip out over a single game, but this is a part where every little thing is crucial. Every little thing is essential. And I think at the end of the day, I just hope that Lindor is okay. If he needs to miss a day or a day or two, I just want him to be back healthy so that he's not compromised in any way, so that he can be Lindor and not compromise Lindor. Because I don't want him to fight through and make things worse. Hopefully we'll find out tomorrow that it's nothing major, but that's kind of like in the back of my head right now, making sure that he's okay. But End of the day, we can control what we control as fans. Is that's just to support the team and cheer them on.
I 100% agree. This is the final run at Citi Field for the season, at least for the regular season. I'll leave that at that. And if you want this team to make it into the postseason, you got to show out. If you can. I don't want to put the onus on fans, but if you can make it out to Citi Field, you got to do it. I know I'll be there Wednesday. I'll be there Saturday. I know you will be there too as well, Jordan. I think you have a couple more games than I do, but if you can make it to Citi Field, you got to do it. Got to support this team. Got to get them ready for what is a very important road trip. And I feel like this is kind of where you want this to end, right? You want to overcome those, demons by beating the Braves, right? And taking that tie break by beating the team that swept us to start the season in the Milwaukee Brewers. You want to beat those two teams to get into the postseason. And if we can do that, that'll be fantastic. And I can't wait for this week, especially now that the Braves lost. So everything is okay. Hopefully the Mets can turn the clock. Hopefully Francisco Lindor is healthy. We'll keep you updated on that on the Subway to Shea podcast going forward. Jordan, this has been a lot of fun. We're going to do this again, whether it's in the playoffs or next season. It's always fun talking with you, seeing you at Citi Field. Let everyone know what you got going on, what jingles you got coming up with Greg, the Jingle Man, and, promote anything you got coming up.
Yeah. Well, thank you for having me. This was fun too. We'll definitely do this for sure. I just posted the series recap for Philly, so that one's up. Right now, it's really the series recaps that are going on, and yeah, there are a lot of things in the works. You can follow me on all socials, JR Simpson Music. That's X and TikTok and Instagram as well. And yeah, I mean, I know for me personally, it's going to be a very busy couple of weeks, and hopefully further than that with the Mets, seeing how they go. But I'll be working on music too, not Mets related as well, and so that's going on. And yeah, I mean, I'm tired, but yeah, so it's gonna be. Yeah, I think somebody said I do have music out actually. If you search up my name, Jordan Simpson, on all streaming platforms, I'm there. But yeah, let's go Mets. This is it, guys. This is if we were back in May and you were given where we were, and I were to tell you then that we were going to be in the playoff spot or in the playoff picture right now, we would be like, psh, you're kidding. But hey, this is where we are. And so keep the faith, guys. And it's going to come down to the wire, but every game matters, but we all matter too. We got to show out and support it, guys.
Like Jordan said, subscribe. You can follow him on X at JR Simpson Music. Shea Parking Lot said, let's get the word out. Follow the music. Follow everything that's going on with Jordan, what he's got. Appreciate you so much for joining me on this show. You can follow Subway to Shea on X, Instagram, and TikTok at Subway to Shea. You can follow me at Ant Rivera 86. Like the video. If you want to listen, you can subscribe on Apple Podcasts and Spotify, and make sure you're subscribed on YouTube if you want to watch the live stream and join the chat along with us. But that wraps it up for the Subway to Shea podcast. Huge homestand, the final homestand of the year coming up for these New York Mets. Let's get out there. Let's support this team. Let's be there for this Mets team as they try to make the postseason with 2 weeks left in the season. That wraps it up. Anthony Rivera signing off. Jordan as well. Let's always remember, let's go Mets.